afternoon. This is somehow a funny moment because usually when I'm speaking about Aku Ankka and reading and that kind of stuff, I don't have to introduce myself and what I'm doing here and why I'm doing this. And so I'm starting to introduce Aku Ankka magazine in the Finnish way. In Finland, Aku Ankka is not a magazine only for the kids. We started publishing Aku Ankka magazine in Finland back in 1951, and even from the very beginning, we realized, well, I didn't realize, but the first editor-in-chief realized that Aku Ankka, it could be made in such a good Finnish language and good language that even the adults will enjoy Aku Ankka. And that's something which differs us from all the other Aku Ankka Donald Duck magazines in Europe. I will show you. Of course, we are a magazine for the kids. So the kids must enjoy reading our magazine. And as you can see on the left side, they are starting to read Aku Ankka when they are turning 3 years old. And of course, most of the kids, they are really reading when they are starting to school. And well, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 years old from that. And they are learning to read quite well. But as you can see from the figures, we still have almost 40,000 Finns who have been following us from the very beginning. So the Finns over 65 years old, they are still reading Donald Duck. I don't know if you know, but Aku Ankka is the biggest Finnish magazine and biggest weekly paper in Finland. And we are having like over 500,000 readers every week with our magazine. And what's making this extremely important, according to our reader survey, 40% of the Finns have been learning to read by reading Donald Duck. So the first words they have been reading are from our magazine. This is giving us some power and some responsibility. The other figures that has Aku Ankka inspired you to draw yourself, they are also quite okay. And Finnish people, as you can see, they were quite old when they are reading Donald Duck magazine. They are also collecting, but that's not that important in here. The main thing is learning to read. One thing I have to show you in this event, we were also asking, should the screen time somehow be limited of the kids? And as you can see, we were interviewing over 1,000 Finns, and almost 95% they were hoping that they can somehow limit the screen time of the kids. But anyway, when we are talking about fake news, and when we are talking about targeting and some kind of problems with sharing the information, is that funny? Is that funny at all? Because the main thing in Donald Duck magazine, why it's so popular in Finland, why it's so popular everywhere in Europe, is that it has to be funny. But as you saw, we have so many readers, so we have the responsibility and we have the possibility to somehow teach the kids how the world is working. So, me and my colleagues, well, mainly the editor-in-chief of Germany, Mickey Mouse, and Norwegian Donald Duck, we're having a meeting once a year, and we are deciding what kind of topics we would like to have in our magazine next year. And last year, well, I have to say the idea was coming from Finland. We thought we have to make a story about fake news. And all my colleagues were extremely happy with the idea, and also the scriptwriter Jaakko Seppälä, who was elected to make the script, he was quite happy with the idea. And this story has been published all over Europe 2 weeks back. And the media coverage has been quite huge in every country. And well, that's why I'm here. When they saw that Donald Duck has been making a story about fake news, that's a topic, of course. And the feedback we have been having from the story, it has been amazing. For example, one of my colleagues told that he's having a 5-year-old kid at home, and he was reading aloud this comic story for his son, and next morning, when Helsingin Sanomat came their home, the boy was asking, "How do I recognize the fake news from this newspaper?" And they were having a good talks about what is fake news, where are the fake news coming, and how can you recognize the fake news. And of course, when we are dealing with that kind of stuff, we have to be quite careful that the story has to remain funny, but we can make the educational part in that one. Of course, the story is funny. It's having the normal plot that Beagle Boys are trying to rob the money of Uncle Scrooge. But this time, they realize that they can use fake news, they can use social media targeting and false influencing with the politicians of Duckburg to make Uncle Scrooge look bad and somehow to get their scheme working, how to rob the money bin. And the story was a little bit longer than usually, and it was having like 2 pages of this fake news and targeting roll-up to get Uncle Scrooge look bad, and to show the kids what kind of news they could be. Well, you can take this issue. They are somewhere in the back tables, issues for you, the Aku Ankka magazine for you. But anyway, you can see how it was done. The main fake news that there's a salmon with horns in the river nearby Duckburg. And it was made so ridiculous and funny that every kid can see that it's really fake news. It's nothing to do with the reality. But anyway, anyway, the story was working. The kids were learning some things about fake news and targeting. But that's not the main thing I have to say. If you are thinking, how the kids are learning some media skills, how they are recognizing the fake news, everything is starting from the literacy. And that's something I have been talking quite a while. How is the literacy going on in Finland? PISA tests are made among the 15-year-old pupils in every all over the world actually. And on the year 2006 and 2018, the literacy skills and reading skills were the main topic of the PISA tests. And in the beginning of 2000th century, so 2003 and 2006, Finland was on the first position, on the top on reading skills all over the world. In 1918, we have dropped on the place 5 to 9. So, and the kids are reading less and less. The problem is, you can see here, if we are interviewing a teen who has a reading as a hobby, he's knowing about 70 to 85,000 different words, so his vocabulary is quite huge. And when we are interviewing a teen who hasn't been reading, doesn't have a reading as a hobby, his or her vocabulary might be only 15,000 words. And if you remember Coco the gorilla, who learned 2,000 sign language signs, so which kind of kid you would like to release from home? The kid who has been reading books and that kind of stuff, who is having a huge variety of the words he is able to use, or the teen who does know only 1,500 words. I think you don't have to think about that quite long. But I think that if we think that the language is leading your thoughts, if you don't read, can you read media as well as you would like to do? And this is not a problem only for the Finnish kids and teens, this is also for the adults. 6 in 10 Finnish adults is reading less than they would like to do. And if we are checking, for example, the circulation of Donald Duck magazine, in 2008, it used to be over 300,000 copies every week, and now it's only a little bit over 100,000 copies. Back in 2008, we were the biggest Finnish magazine, but we are still, with the 1/3 of circulation, the biggest Finnish magazine. So, and if we are checking also how the books are selling in Finland, the numbers are only 1/3 of 10 or 15 years back. So everyone is reading less. And there's quite a lot of news about how the audiobooks are taking the space from the printed books. But I've been talking with some scientists working with human brains, and if you're reading a normal book, it's totally different place in your brains which is working than when you are listening to audiobooks. So, if there's something I would like to say in the end of this speech, which turned to be some kind of dystopia instead of a funny Donald Duck speech, read. It's best you can do. Thanks.
I agree. I really agree. Thank you, Mr. Aki Hyyppä, for a wonderful performance. We are so happy to have you with us today. Before the break, Beth Goldberg introduced pre-bunking to us. Are you going to teach your readers pre-bunking as well?
Actually, the next meeting for the subject next year is going to be in April, and I'm really trying to find the best topics I can find, and that might be the one.
Any questions from the audience to Aki Hyyppä? There is one, yes, Martha. Here you go.
Hi, Martha from Google. Thank you so much. Question, is this sort of format with Donald Duck as this sort of champion to teach misinformation 100% unique to Finland? Have you seen it anywhere else in the world?
This story was published in all over the Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, and that kind of. And unfortunately, Donald Duck comics are not published in English. In the United States, they are making some books and albums, but they are only for the adult collectors who have been reading the Donald Duck comics when they were young in the 50s and 60s. So these comics are not spreading that well. I know that they're having plans to get the kids back to Duckburg again, but it's not that hard because the break has been so long in the States. But anyway, I have to say that in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, the comics are huge.
Why is that?
I don't know. When Donald Duck came to Finland in 1951, it was a miracle during that time. Finland was still recovering from the Second World War, and it was somehow a miracle when I'm comparing the first Donald Ducks, which were already in 4-color, to the black and white old kids' books, old magazines in the early 50s. And we were really able to get these huge generations to read Donald Ducks. And they have been subscribing that magazine for their kids and
so on.
And so on. And I know some families with 4 generations who have been learning to read from Donald Duck. So it's some kind of national habit. And it goes as well also in other Scandinavian countries.
Should adults start to read more comics? What do you think?
It's a good first step. Because as I told you, 40% of the Finns have been learning to read by reading Donald Duck. And I'm really hoping that it's the easy way to start reading. And well, the next step, they might go into the novels and the huge, large classics and that kind of stuff. So I'm really pleased that I'm the first one.
We have 2 questions, one from Martha and then from the first row over here.
I just had a quick follow-up. I just find it interesting if you think about the challenges on reaching seniors that we heard about before, but you have such a high percentage that is maybe an interesting vehicle if it sort of takes people back to something they're familiar with. But also, you know, another Gen Z trend is this sort of looking back and taking content that's nostalgic. So that could really be an interesting thing to tap into. Just a thought.
Yes, but I think people are so extremely busy nowadays, and we're having a sister magazine of Aku Ankka, which is Aku Ankka Classic, of course, and we are publishing the old comics from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I think that's the main magazine for the adult readers, because it's easy to grab, quick to read, and giving you taking you back to good memories of childhood, and I think that's really...
It's cozy.
It's cozy.
Yeah, you go.
Hi, thank you. I'm an obsessive reader, and I often have this debate with my husband, who listens to audiobooks but isn't such a sort of avid reader. Do we think that sort of listening to audio literature would have the same effect with teens or young children as actively reading?
Of course, listening to the books and audiobooks and that, it's better than nothing, because reading is it's the firewood for your imagination. So you are listening to the stories and they are taking you somewhere. But of course, I think the main problem with the audiobooks, it's if you are walking on the street, you can listen to the audiobooks, but you can't read walking on the street because, well, you might bump into something. It's a little bit lowering your concentration, and you are not concentrating on the story that much. I've been listening, of course, well, who hasn't been listening to some audiobooks, and you are always find a good place for the audiobooks. But if I have been listening to a good book, I'm always buying it, and I'm always reading it again. And I would like to have it on my bookshelf. Well, it's a problem. I'm having over 4,000 books at home, so it's I'm really afraid of if I'm moving or something. But anyway, it's a little bit different thing. But of course, it's good for your imagination. And for example, my boys, when they were like on the 3rd or 4th grade, they were starting to avoid some friends because they were only gaming and they don't have the imagination anymore for playing at all. So it's taking you somewhere because they didn't read at all. And they were only playing those video games or that kind of stuff. And they were not able to play because of the lack of some imagination. It's sad.
You've helped make my argument, thank you.
Very good. We need them, the arguments. Thank you, Mr. Aki Hyyppä, for a wonderful performance. And thank you. It was wonderful to have you here.
Did you have?
Yes, and you can find these over there on one table over there. So here you can learn about fake news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.